Hello, everybody. I thought that we would have a chat about the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that's coming up on the 21st of April. It's going to be in Taurus. It's quite important because the last time we had one was in 1941, prior to that in 1858, and prior to that we have to go all the way back to 1181. So it's quite a rare one, and although Jupiter-Uranus conjunctions happen every sort of 14 years, in it, if you look at all the signs, they don't happen in Taurus all that often. And why is this important? Because the energies of Jupiter and Uranus are very opposite to the energies of Taurus, because both of those are expansive, vibrant, kind of progressive, adventurous, explosive, more dynamic. And of course, in Taurus, we have a more conservative, more cautious, more emotional, receptive, feminine sign, and then we've got these two major masculine planets causing a boost of energy. Now, if you just look at the symbolism, we know that Taurus is the planet of money, to a degree property as well, precious metals like gold. We see the gold price going up and up and up, even more so after the conflict with Iran and Israel. As I say, it's Taurus is money. Will we see a crash in the property markets going through this year? Will we see a crash in the financial markets? Will we see banks going down? Taurus being the sign of banking. So all those questions we're going to be having a little bit of a look at. Plus, the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is happening on the Sun in Israel's 8th house. Hence, we have almost this existential crisis that Israel is going through, as sort of perceived by them, I think, and this issue with Iran, which we'll have a little look into. And we have another interesting thing is the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is directly on the midheaven of Donald Trump, and I think he will be in the ascendancy. Now, I know that I will want to comment a little bit on Gerald Celenti's interview with George Galloway, because they covered a lot of the topics that directly to relate to Jupiter-Uranus, except I have a slightly different take on them. Gerald Celenti said he was in two minds whether it would be Trump or Biden. Now, he'd actually called Trump in May 2016, but this time he's not calling it. I think it's totally obvious it's going to be Trump. And the reason is the media are slowly getting behind him because he has always been more bellicose against Iran. And if America does want to go into more wars, they need the section of the population, particularly the Southerners, who are far more likely to be Republicans and to vote Trump, to be up for the war. And no one's going to want to go to war for Biden. So if they want to have a war, they realize people will be more likely, the kind of conservative right will be more likely to get behind a war if Trump is leading the way. And he's already talked tough on Iran, so it would be consistent for him to still go in with Iran. So I think it's far more likely it's going to be Trump. Plus, on the election, the beginning of November, Jupiter is directly on his Sun Uranus conjunction in his 10th house, also very close to his north node of destiny. Now, I see that being very important because his destiny is strongly linked to the unfolding of prophecy. Now, as I say, is it a plan, is it prophecy? It doesn't really matter if it's unfolding, right? So let's talk a little bit. I've written an article, which I'll link to. It's on my WordPress site, where I sometimes put a few things, probably not as often as I should. And here I talk all about this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. I've also talked about it in relation to our personal lives as well. So what do we see? We see historic changes in society, in the global economy. We see the emergence of central bank digital currency, cryptocurrency becoming a thing again. You've seen a huge rise in Bitcoin, although it was knocked back a little bit by what was going on with Iran. And we see a whole shift in the geopolitical axis of power, a shift from east to west. Now, when it last happened in 1941, we saw the crumbling of the British Empire, crumbling of Germany as a power, and the emergence of America as a dominant world force. And of course, that was also the time after World War I or World War II, 1941, the last time the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction happened in Taurus, that we had the Cold War beginning. And I think now with the Jupiter-Uranus-Taurus conjunction, we're going to see a big shift in global power structures again, with the power shifting over towards the China-Russia-BRICS alliance, as America continues to decline, and does Europe, because of high energy prices, the willful mismanagement of those economies, and by design, because we know that this has long been a kind of the parasite class have sucked these countries dry, hollowed out the middle class, and now they're going to move over to suck the new power bases dry, or to project their power by using the dynamic and stronger Chinese economy, which is much better for manufacturing, and the Russian economy, better as a war machine, better for manufacturing, and better for the economy as a whole. Now, Gerald Celente was saying that in China, 30% of their economy is construction, and it's the part of the economy that is really in decline at the moment, or in trouble, because they've simply overbuilt. And we know with the was it Evergrande or Everglade? Evergrande, I think, was the name of that big company that went bust in China. So he says construction and the building sector of the economy, which accounts for 30% of GDP, is in a lot of trouble, and he thinks that could lead to a big problem for the Chinese economy, right? So that would also tie in to the potential disaster we see coming now with the economy. He was also saying, and he said this for a long, long time on his regular Monday show on InfoWars, that there's going to be a crash in commercial property simply because we have a 30% occupancy vacancy rate in San Francisco in commercial, about 25% in Portland, 23% in New York City, so across America. And we know we also have it in our big buildings here in London and Canary Wharf. Huge problem with occupancy because of the COVID era, people working from home, working patterns changing. So he says all that commercial property is going to lead to, a lot of it is held by the banks, so if it's devalued and has far less value, then that affects the balance sheet of the banks, also maybe defaults on loans. We see this also with our retail. I've talked about turd towns and Wandering Turnip, that guy who shows the state of the high street in many British towns. Again, we have a high value, still properties far too high values, given the fact they cannot rent them out. They're sitting there vacant, huge amounts of the high street vacant, and this could lead to massive devaluations on bank asset sheets, leading to bank failures. Now, the only thing I'd counter that by saying is they could be repurposing these buildings to house people, maybe refugees, other people, and then it wouldn't really matter that they're not housing offices or shops. So that's probably why that hasn't yet caused a crash. So although he's been talking about this crash coming because of the low occupancy, it's just not happening, and I think it's because they're going to repurpose. I already know a friend of mine lived in Manhattan with her sister a while ago, many years ago. It was about 20 years, well, no, 15 years ago, and they were living in what used to be an office building, and they changed it into flats. So they can easily remake all these buildings into flats, which is great for 15-minute cities because they want people stuffed into these high rises, couple of shops down below, no need to leave your high rise kind of thing, right? So it would be perfect for that, and that's probably why that hasn't caused a shift yet. Now, during the 1881 conjunction, Japanese astronomers observed a supernova, one of only 8 supernovae in the Milky Way observed in recorded history. It's in the constellation Cassiopeia. I think it's quite interesting, although not particularly relevant, or maybe they'll find another supernova, who knows. So then, what does it mean for us personally? Let's take it back to the micro level. Well, Jupiter-Uranus are a sign of hope, optimism, also sudden change. So get ready for some ructions, expect surprises in your life, get ready to capitalize on opportunities, and think big. Just be more dynamic, more flexible in the way you approach life, because it's also a time for innovation. Now, worldwide, it could be a time of discoveries, but on a macro level, it's about being more open-minded, living your life with more freedom, being more self-expressive, and just adapting quickly and grabbing opportunities before they slip through your fingers. So let's look at 1941 again, when we had this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. Shortly before Operation Barbarossa, the Nazi attack on Russia, which they successfully repelled. And again, we see this conflict in Ukraine, wondering if there's going to be an uptick in that conflict after this transit. In May 1858, just at the time of the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus, the Treaty of Aigun was concluded. That affected Russia, and Russia received all the land north of the Amur River and a large part of land to the east of the Ussuri River, amounting to an estimated 2 million miles of new territory for Russia. So, aligning this as a parallel with now, does this mean Russia is going to grab a whole lot of Ukrainian territory and annex it into Russia, absorb it into Russia? Will they take the whole of the Black Sea area or the coast of the Black Sea? Interesting to wonder if that would happen. Okay, I've talked about it influencing the Donald Trump presidency, pushing him into the limelight. I know he's having this sort of trial. I think a lot of these trials are just show trials. I don't even believe there's any possibility of him suffering any defeat. I think this is actually to keep his base angry, engaged, keep him in the news. It's probably going to help him more than anything, especially as the big hitters are soon going to come out, all for Donald Trump, all the Musks, the Rogans, all these people in the kind of fake alternate media are going to be pushing him simply because he's very malleable to the whole Iran agenda. You may be interested, but in the year 1858, there was a 6-mile earthquake destroyed much of Mexico City. I think that's interesting because Mexico came up quite a few times in my readings, and also the solar eclipse of the 8th passed a little bit through Mexico, through that northwest corner. So it'd be interesting to see what's going to happen there in Mexico. Also, it was the year Abraham Lincoln made the House divided speech. Very much resonates with today's America being so divided. It was also the year, this is 1858, the time of the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. That February was the time of the Lord's apparitions when Bernadette Soubirous had a vision at the grotto of Massabielle. It was a series of 18 events known as the Marian apparitions, similar in a way to Fatima, but a lot of people don't take these quite as seriously as Fatima. Now, the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, right, let's talk again on a spiritual level, has a lot to do with the awakening of our consciousness and being more purposeful and mindful in the way we live our lives. It's definitely a time to just go beyond any perceived limitations we have about our destiny, about who we are, what we can achieve. We need to smash those comfort zones and boundaries. It's time also to ask ourselves some difficult and searching questions about why we are at where we are at in our lives, and to take more responsibility and to perhaps acknowledge that we are the ones who stand in our own way a lot of the time. And so certainly a time to rebel against any status quo in our life that is stale, uninspiring, and it's just dragging us down, right? Now, the Jupiter-Uranus cycle has always been associated with key cycles in the free market economy, and it can also reflect buoyancy of the markets. Now, Gerald Celente says he expects the gold price to keep going up, 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 especially when there are rumors of war. Now, this is key, rumors of war, because Revelations talks of rumors of war. And I think if we go to Twitter here, Dr. Shiva has made a very good point, which I totally concur with. Now, he says the genocide in Palestine would not have been possible without the silence and complicity of the Muslim world's Arab and Persian regimes, the leaders of Saudi Arabia, Iran, Turkey, Iraq, and Jordan. He says, be warned that the war and firing missiles between these regimes and Israel may all be theater to merely pacify the righteous anger of the working people, and not really to see an end to any of the atrocities. So he goes on there, it's a rather interesting tweet, and he says the regimes of Israel, Iran, Turkey, and Jordan fear protests more they do war among themselves, right? That can be totally controlled and manipulated to think they're on opposite sides. And I think David Icke was covering a similar theme, and I definitely agree with that. So while the chart suggests plenty of action for Iran and Israel, it's debatable whether this is real or sort of a ping pong. So, I think a lot of this ping pong, missiles this way, missiles that way. I know Scott Ritter came on George Galloway and he was explaining in detail, and they were very excited about the whole thing because they felt Iran had shown their power, their might, they pushed back. And of course, they were happy about that. In principle, if Israel bombed the Iranian embassy, yes, a retaliation would be in order. They shouldn't have done that. It's against international law. On principle, sure, it goes both ways, and it's understandable that there was a strike, but I think it's a bit, strawberry fields. Nothing is real. It could be a face-saving exercise just for the general public. I just wanted to go on to this as well because this came up from Mint Press. It's on my Twitter. It's an article they've done exposing. Now, I think this typifies a lot of what we see. Amal Clooney still silent. Now, isn't she supposed to be like a big human rights lawyer? You know, this whole human rights lawyer thing, whenever there's a breach of human rights, they're never anywhere to be seen unless there's a political agenda attached to it. And there you go. There you go. She's got it there. 30,000 people have died in Gaza, most of them women and children. UNICEF says over 13,000 children have been killed in this offensive. The story of Gaza's destruction in 100 lives, a visual guide. These are The Guardian, Reuters, whatever. I can't read what that one is, it's a bit blurry. But Amal Clooney is silent about the genocide. And it says their reasons. Well, I think it's obvious what the reasons are because we have this double standard. When it comes to Israel, certain things are accepted and no one says anything. When it comes to any other country, there's a freak and double freak. The country, we must have regime change, we must send in the UN, there must be sanctions, something must be done. When it's Israel, it's, oh no, but you see. Or, oh, it's some form of hatred. Yeah, so I thought that was quite interesting. And the full article goes on. I think there's also other information there about the funding her husband Clooney gets from the Gates Foundation. So they're very well plugged in right at the top and they push their agendas. And they won't be talking about human rights either for, South African farmers that are getting murdered. What about the Armenians that are getting slaughtered? And now apparently the Russian forces are pulling out, and that's the only barrier between the poor Armenians who are getting no help at all and the Azerbaijanis who are being funded by supplied with weapons by Israel. So all these people, utter fraud, never liked them. And I feel always when I don't like these people, I get vindicated. Well, in most cases, I'd say anyway. I did see Netanyahu in a video on Twitter saying that, we are fighting Hamas. We're fighting this war. If we lose, it'll be you. So you've kind of got to support us because what we're doing here is basically protecting you. We are fighting the fight for you. We're like the first line of defense. And if we fail, it's on you. Yeah, like what? Like Hamas want to lock me in a 15-minute city. Hamas want me to drive an unaffordable electric vehicle. Hamas locked me in my house for almost 2 years. Made me wear a mask and almost forced me, in some cases, did force people to have an injectable that they didn't want. Yeah, Hamas are doing all these chemtrails, which are really bad for everyone's health and for the farming and for our chests and our breathing. Yeah, definitely. And what else are they possibly up to? Taxing us to death, the war in Ukraine. Is that them? Did they start that war in Ukraine? Gee, I wonder. Could be. Anything else they're doing? I mean, do me a favor. We are, even if the terrorist attacks that happen on UK soil, even if they are real, and there's debate about it, as you all know, how likely are you more likely to win the lottery than to be affected? But you will be affected by the whole, climate change, World Health Organization agenda, and all these other agendas, and you can categorically say those are not Hamas. Nor is the concept of communism. So I just think it's well, you've heard what I think. I also wanted to alert you to the new fake narrative that you get in particularly the conservative right, and that is that, well, we've got to stop this illegal immigration. But legal immigration, yay, it's great. It's just totally missing the point. For example, what is legal? Legal is anything the government says is legal. So if they say tomorrow that anyone can come here on a boat or any other and it's legal, then it's legal. I remember when Theresa May was in South Africa and she said, well, it's okay if you take farms away from people and under repossession or whatever, redistribution of wealth. It's okay as long as it's legal. Yeah, so a corrupt government can make anything legal. So the whole thing of whether it's legal or not is a total red herring. As we can see with Israel, it's illegal if other people use weapons. It's illegal if Russia defends its citizens. It's illegal if anyone does anything, but everything Israel does is legal. We can see the hypocrisy when it comes to them, and it runs throughout everything. Secondly, on the sort of George Galloway Workers' Party side, they'll say, but whether legal immigration is illegal, illegal, or legal, It has the same effect in terms of it puts downward pressure on wages, more people competing for jobs, and there'll be more people competing for middle class jobs with legal immigration as well. So, more difficult to get jobs. And also, a lot of legal immigration is not people who are working, it's dependence of workers, dependence on people coming to study. And it's the whole academic industrial complex being funded as well, the universities, which is just another scam going on. Also, more and more people coming, legally or illegally, puts upward pressure on rents and house prices, so artificially inflating the property market, making much harder for people who already live here to get on the property market. Also, more pressure on public services, whether they're legal or illegal, they're going to be using the NHS, public services, pressure on the water supply, the electricity supply. So, making this distinction of, oh, well, it's absolutely fantastic if it's legal and not if it's illegal is totally irrelevant. It's a red herring. All it's going to lead to is being able to pacify people by making more of it legal. But it's still going to put you under the same pressure, the same, disadvantage. It's just going to be hell for everyone, whether they 2 minutes here, a history of 2,000 years here, in the end, because it's going to lead to the collapse, as I've talked about in the Clown Piven plan, which is to collapse all social services as a way of bringing in change. So all these things are happening just to bring in the changes that they want eventually. So it's important to just not get caught. I had something interesting, and I don't know if it'll come up quickly here. Let me just bring it up. It's about Candace Owens and her father-in-law, Michael Farmer. He's rated in Bogle, Buffett, Soros, Slim, Icahn, Pickens, Pilgrim Society level corruption. So he's right up there. Her father-in-law is right up there with all the Soroses and that. And it says here the world's 99 greatest investors, and it lists him there in terms of the Red Right Group, something capital, metals. He's very big in metals as well, and he's one of the top kind of billionaire investors in the world, along with Bogle, Buffett, Soros, those names they mentioned there. So one has to view her with skepticism. Who is she? Where did she really come from? Hatched out of an egg. She apparently did this big rant on YouTube, and she had this really impoverished background. Really, is anything we hear about her true? And now she's had the stellar rise. I think we have to also look at everything that's going on with her with a lot of skepticism. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoy the article I wrote on the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. And lots else here. I've gone off on a bit of a tangent, but hope it gives you food for thought.